Well, you might be thinking that Ben and Dan, the hosts of this podcast, are just always talking about politics these days. But come on, let's be real.
It's election season.
It's election season. And you know, one of the reasons I've always followed politics, Ben, is because it's a sport, it's a business, it's
human nature.
It's human nature.
You get to see people at their best and worst.
Issues. Yeah, there's all kinds of things going on. There's historic trends and so forth. So yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah. And I don't know that in my lifetime, which is getting longer every year, I've ever seen a more interesting rise of a political personality than that of Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
He's truly a force of nature. Whether you love him or hate him, you're talking about him.
Yeah.
So today, this is interesting.
Idea.
This is interesting. This is Ben's idea. This is not Dan's fault. Dan's the political bug.
I had this idea like 6 months ago, and we're finally doing it.
Yeah, so I'm interviewing Ben on this topic, so I want y'all to know that. I think my views are fairly well known.
Well, let me tell you why. Well, go ahead. Can I?
Well, I want to tell them what the episode is.
Go ahead and tell
So
what
we're going to be
looking
at the way evangelical Christians divide into certain number of camps. Basically, 5 camps is how they view Trump.
Yes.
And then you're going to become pastorly for us.
Yeah.
And you're going to give warnings for whatever of those 5 camps you're in. You're going to give a word of warning. I think it's going to be a brilliant episode. I'm excited about it.
Well, and I want your feedback too, because there might be more than 5. There might be.
Can you do that? This is a became a 4-part episode.
One of the reasons why I want to do this is because I think from the other side, they believe that all evangelicals are this monolithic group that just all think and believe the same things. And there's so much variety of opinion about a lot of different things, including Trump. And you know, I think it's Trump's evangelical support has pretty much been consistent through the last 9 years, right? I mean, from the 2016, 2020, and even probably how they're polling here in the 2024 election, the white evangelical vote is predominantly between 80 and 85% for Trump, right?
Yep. It appears that way.
So I just think there's probably a good cross-section of even people within our church, Life Fellowship, that believe this as well. Like, so I look at these 5 groups, and it's kind of like a bell curve, which I think is in these 5 groups. But the first group, so I just want to confront this because I think.
Am I in one of these groups?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah. I in fact almost called the one group Dan's group. but I decided not to. I actually have like titles.
Thank you. I'm so close to retirement. I don't want to get fired.
Yeah. No. I just think that we as Christians need to do some deeper level thinking of why do I vote and why do I vote for him or why do I not vote for him? I think you have to really ask yourself some hard questions. All of us do. And I think if you have not wrestled with how you vote, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And so anyways, the 5 groups, the first group is the first tribe, I would say, are the fans. These are the people who are just, and I think these are probably 10%. Roughly about 10% of the evangelicals, they just absolutely adore and love Trump. They want to go to his rallies. They wear the Trump shirts. That they want to have the Trump flag
in their yard, back of their pickup.
There's a lot of social media posts.
They tweet or repost everything that's Trump. They get mad at you if you attack Trump. You know what I mean? Like, these are the people that I think the reason why they love Trump so much is predominantly they identify with his with how the media hates them because they feel like they themselves are hated by the media. They've seen the media's portrayal of evangelicals and Christians and they just don't like it. And so they identify with the hate and the attacks that Donald Trump gets, and they feel like, oh man, he's one of us, right? Like, I even think about the assassination attempt, and you're watching that video, and as they're rushing him to the Suburban, the thing that stood out to me about the end of that video was these 2 people, one was an old man, one was a young woman, and they start flipping off people and just yelling and shouting at the camera. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that.
And it's just like there's this anger, this like
because it's mainstream media, like
you try to kill him, and
wow,
I'm not going to say
because all the media is the enemy,
so
right?
they identify with this hate and this vitriol, and they say they hate me and they hate him, and therefore we're buds together. So I think, but I also think that there's a group within evangelicals that loves Trump's brashness and bravado. They long for a leader who's going to stand up to the media and punch back, because if you look at the weakness of some of the leadership qualities of like a George W. Bush and H.W. Bush and Mitt Romney and McCain, like we've had these party leaders who evangelicals have supported that are just kind of like they just kind of like they lay over, they try to appease, and they just don't like that. And so here's a guy who really says,
I don't think you can say that of McCain. McCain just didn't like evangelicals.
That's true.
I don't think
that's
he
true.
did, but anyway.
I think there's another part about they look at Trump as a savior. They have a he is going to deliver us from evil kind of mentality towards him, and they have a false view of what he's able and what can he accomplish. So I think that's
and to be fair, just real quick, he is telling them that. He did recently do a speech where he literally was telling everyone, if you're Christians, just vote this time, because then you will never have to vote again. I'm going to solve all of your problems. He did. I'm going to solve all of your problems.
I was looking for the context to try to get to some form of reason, and it just wasn't there. It was just one of those things. I'm going to rush you to get to the next, because there's, and my brain's getting ready to explode right now just because I want to just jump in with my two cents, but I'm going to behave. So
no,
you can. No. I want to wait till the end. So your second group.
A second group is, I call these the partisans. They vote Republican, period.
Mm-hmm. And what percentage did you say?
10%.
10%?
These are people like, you could put a chimpanzee in an R t-shirt and they're like, I'm voting for that. I'm voting for that chimpanzee, man. I love that chimpanzee.
The old yellow dog Democrats.
They just don't care who's on the top of the... They hate Mitt Romney until he's the presidential candidate, and they're like, I love Mitt Romney. You're like, I just think you love the jersey. Mm-hmm. That's all they love. They don't care about policies or the personality. It's just purely about the party. I vote the party, period. And they're just partisans, and they don't think critically about anything. So anyways, that's the second group. The third group, I think, is this is where the bell curve gets really tall really fast. I think probably about 65% of the evangelicals fit into this group. I call them the policy pragmatists. Mm-hmm. The policy pragmatists. These are the people that are like, you know what? Whether they like or don't like Trump, probably the majority of them don't like Trump, but they look at it and they say, I've always supported the platform of the Republican Party. They're more pro-life. Mm-hmm. They're more like this. So they're either pro like the policies of the Republican, or conservatism. They vote conservatism, or they look at the other side and they look at the Democrats and the liberals, and they say, I definitely don't want that agenda advanced. So it's either pro-conservatism policies or anti
Hillary Clinton.
Anti-progressivism, and you're just like, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to hold my nose and vote for what I think is going to be best for our nation. I think that's why I consider them the 65%. There's a big group that think like that. The fourth group, I would call them the principled objectors. This is Dan's group. Okay, these are the people that look at Trump's character, his past, his personality, and they're like, when I saw Bill Clinton act like that, and when I saw, they said we cannot have a leader in charge that lives like this or talks like this or whatever it is. It's Russell Moore. I mean, Russell Moore from the ELRC was like basically destroyed by the Southern Baptists because he would not support Trump, because he said, I wouldn't support Bill Clinton back in 1992. Therefore, I'm not going to support Trump in 2016. And he got destroyed.
He died the martyr's death. What percentage would you say?
I say 10%. 10%. And then I think there's the last group, the fifth group, which is about 5%, are the repulsed. This is the group that they vomit in their mouth every single time Trump is mentioned, because they feel like Trump betrays a level of civility and behavior that is the exact opposite of what Christ modeled for us, and they feel like to identify with, to support that a person like that in any way betrays the very nature of our faith, and therefore there's just a genuine, they're just repulsed by him. And so those are the 5 groups.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. What do you think, Josh?
I
Josh and I both are rather political bugs.
I think I'm having a hard time with the 4th and 5th categories because I feel like a lot of people are going to fit into both of those. A lot of the principled objectors
That's
are
exactly
going
what
to
I
be
was
like,
gonna say.
I agree with a lot of the repulse things.
Yeah.
And so I want to know, like, what is the more extreme maybe end of, and I don't know what that would be.
I like to think of myself as a principled puker.
You're somewhere in between.
I'm so principled he makes me want to puke. No, but and I'll probably get hate mail for that too. But I don't know that I necessarily agree with the percentages.
Okay.
Because I think the percentages of his fans and evangelicals
is more
than 10%.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing that gets me about the top 3.
Okay, can I stop right there and just push back a little bit on the more than 10%?
Go right ahead.
You can't forget about what now we've known as secular evangelicals. These are people who are not born again. I'm talking about Life Fellowship Church people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not talking about the people like, oh yeah, I'm evangelical, but they never go to church. They don't really believe in Jesus. There's a lot of people those kinds of secular evangelicals that I would say.
So how would they be different than just people formerly known as conservatives or populists? Because I see the Republican Party today as being a morphing conglomeration of
it's
interest
becoming
groups.
a very big tent.
Yeah. So and at some point I'm leaving left the tent because I'm just not going to spend the night in the same tent as some of these people. Just not going to do it because my bigger tent is the tent of Christianity, not the tent of my partisanism.
Yeah, but so this is where I think where the interesting dialogue happens, because you have the policy pragmatists that are like, but by leaving the tent, you're saying yes to the woke agenda, the LGBTQ rights, and that are that will attack us as Christians.
Right.
And so how do you respond to? I know we're kind of getting in the weeds right now.
No, I think this is where we belong, really. I mean, because these are the hard questions about being able to have even civil dialogue in this.
Right.
I mean, if I put anything about this and not make it about Trump, but just make it as kind of like an outsider looking, because that's what I consider myself now. I'm not an insider. And just make that, it always becomes about the personality of Donald Trump. I don't have to say his name. And I mean, I got compared to Nero the other day. It's just over and over and over again.
Wait, why'd you get compared to Nero?
Because he fiddled while Rome burned.
Oh, so they're saying
he said I'm a fiddler.
You are.
I'm unwilling to put my endorsement on him. Okay. I'd rather see Rome burn. And my response to that is yes, because Rome's a corrupt city, and Nero was a corrupt guy, and I'm not playing his fiddle or anybody else's who's corrupt.
Okay.
And I also mentioned at the time that also while Nero was fiddling watching Rome burn, his garden parties were being lit by true believers who were dipped in oil and placed on posts and set afire. So I'm not worshiping the emperor, and I'm not playing his fiddle. I'd rather be a garden party lighter.
Okay.
That said, and here's the thing, but you don't have to agree with me. Members of my own household do not agree with me. My mother the other day tried to convince me how wrong I was because she would be your policy pragmatist.
Yeah.
But here's where I think they've been duped. Their pragmatism is excusing the personality, but not really the politics, because they don't understand that Trump is not a conservative. He's a populist.
No, he is.
And that's what frustrates, because words matter. They do. And the words coming out of his mouth are not that of a genuine conservative. Otherwise, he wouldn't waffle the way he does on the pro-life issue. He wouldn't waffle the way he does on the gay marriage issue. He would not waffle on these core conservative principles. And you never know where he is on a position from day to day, because it can change. He will morph because it's about the power that comes with building this constituency. So that's why at the Republican National Convention, you had a WWF fighter. What in the world's he doing up
it's
there?
It's called WWE now, Dan.
Whatever. You've got a Hindu prayer being prayed to a goddess. And I'm telling you, I'm not living in that tent. You can't make me do it.
Yeah.
And
this is why the principle, that's what I'm saying, there's principled objectors.
Yeah, but it also repulses me. It makes me angry. It really does.
Okay.
Because to me, I have no king but Jesus.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds just condescendingly pious or whatever, but that is the filter I use. And you say, well, did you vote for Romney? I did. Did I vote for Bush? I did. Was I disappointed in Bush's presidency? I was. In fact, George W. Bush basically was the one who pushed me out of politics. He really did. And I went on the air here in Charlotte. I wrote a national article about it for Evangelical News Press on why I'm out. And that marked it, I think it was about 2006 when I made that. And my congresswoman called me and chewed me up because of that.
Yeah.
But in the end, I have no regrets because I can have conversations now with people I couldn't have conversations before, and I can tell them about Jesus, and that's what I've given my life to. Not everybody else has.
No.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. And I'm not upset with anybody who decides to vote, frankly, for either one of them.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got 6 minutes left.
What's the warning?
I'm going to give the warnings.
We got to have the warning. Sorry, I was ranting.
No, I think everyone wants to know how you feel, Dan. You just did.
They never have to ask. They never have to ask.
This is the dialogue that people need to be hearing.
So my warning to the fans is don't lose your witness and don't love a false savior. I think I think so many of them don't care about, like you said, their personal witness anymore. All they care about is their love of Trump, and they've elevated him into a place that's almost loving him more than they love Jesus, and I think that's very dangerous. My warning to the partisans, these are the jersey wearers, what I would say is you have to start thinking critically about why you vote, how you vote, and who you vote for. Like if you don't start thinking critically, you will start voting for a chimpanzee eventually. And the jersey that you should care about way more than the Republican or even Democrat is the jersey of Christ. Like it's I care way more about the kingdom than the party. And I think there's a lot of Christians who they equate the two, which is very dangerous. But I think that these are people who do not think critically about, well, why would I vote for someone like that? They check their brains at the door. My warning to the policy pragmatists is, and this is more of a question, but does character matter at all in leadership? I want to hear them answer that question. How would they answer that question? Does character matter at all? And if it doesn't, why it doesn't? And if it does, how do you, again, you have to walk through the
where's the line?
Where's the line? That's what I want to know.
The pragmatic point of no return.
And then here's the second question: when does pragmatism become greater than the principles? Like at some point, if you keep compromising these little steps over and over and over again, you end up the pragmatism without any anchor in principle will lead you to hell in a handbasket. So you've got to be really careful at some point. Like you said, if Trump is not a line by which you're saying I can't vote for a guy like that, then what would it take for a leader to be like, I can't vote for a guy who believes or a woman who believes in that? You know what I mean? Like I just think those are some questions you have to really wrestle with if you are a policy pragmatist. The fourth group I would say is don't be proud and pompous. Because I think I'm not saying this is you, Dan.
No,
I'm
but
not
you
saying
could
this
because
is you.
The dogmatism makes you appear to be proud and pompous.
Yeah,
that's part of it.
I think that there's a level of people that think that when you feel like you're principled and everyone else you feel like is pragmatist, you feel like I'm the only one who's biblical here.
Come across as a real jerk.
Yeah, and so
been there, done that.
I do think I think one of the things you have to be willing to live with is gray, and that's hard for some people. Dan is keeling over right now.
Yeah, because that's always been a problem in my life.
Yeah.
I see things
I married someone who has a hard time with gray.
Clarity is my best friend.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of gray in life, and you have to be willing to wrestle with the gray.
You're right.
Okay. And there are going to be people who have fall differently than you in the shades of gray than you.
It's like looking at those dresses on Facebook.
Remember the ones? It's gold. No, it's blue, or whatever it was. And the last warning to the repulsed, I would say, you got to remember that God uses secular rulers and leaders all the time to further his purposes. Like I was just reading in Isaiah about about 150 years or 200 years before Cyrus, Isaiah writes about Cyrus, how he will be the one who helps my people come back to the promised land, right? And so, but Cyrus was not a good guy. He wasn't a good leader. yet God raised him up for a specific purpose and plan. And just because you might be repulsed by a man doesn't mean that God will not use him for some purpose.
Yeah, and sometimes the purpose is judgment. It really is.
Could be.
It really is, because you can't. Many people don't repent until they've been judged.
Yeah.
So.
And the other thing I would say is love your enemy. Love your enemies, because he needs Jesus just like everyone else.
Yeah. So. And everybody who likes to talk politics needs to remember that.
Love your enemies.
And they also need to make sure they have the right definition of enemy. Your enemy is not somebody that has an opinion different than yours. Yeah. And there's enemies of the truth that ought to bother us. But short of that, and that's a good thing to remember. And I think that's the thing that pains me most about this period in American history is we have lost so much civility in our ability to gain, and we've also normalized being uncivil toward each other, because when the people at the head of the ticket are calling each other weird or DEI candidates or whatever insult of the day, and it changes from day to day, they're looking for one that wounds.
Sleepy liar.
Whatever.
Name.
So there have been times that's happened in American history as well, but whether you liked him or not, George W. Bush, or George Herbert Walker Bush, rather, was a gentleman. Mm-hmm. Reagan was a gentleman. Mm-hmm. And I do miss that presence that has historically been consistent with being a conservative.
Jimmy Carter. Like, I still see videos on Reddit showing up of Jimmy Carter, who's like 100. Every time he goes on the plane, he shakes every single hand on the plane. Like, it's just this whole thing. Like, he just spends all this time with people now.
Yeah. His biggest known sins were he hit a rabbit with a boat oar, and he lusted after somebody in his heart. Wow. I mean, those politically aside,
miss those days, the good old days.
Yeah, and he was a horrible president. I'm not saying he wasn't a great president, but I think he was a good person.
I agree. Yeah,
I think he loved Christ.
Yeah,
and
you just didn't agree with his politics.
I didn't agree with, and I don't even agree with a lot of his theology, because he's not my form of Baptist. But Ben, this was brilliant. I think this needed to be said, and if you're ticked off, you really needed to hear that.
Well, I want everyone to ask themselves, where do I land and why am I here? And if I'm here, what do I need to be careful of? I think no matter what you believe about Trump, my hope is that in 4 years, we don't have to worry about this anymore. There's someone else. But I do think that Trump has forever changed the Republican Party.
Yes. Forever.
And the wake of his reality, I think we don't even know what that will mean. But I think we just have to, let's not check our brains at the door and be aware of why we're doing things.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do.
Let's keep our eye on the ball.
That's right.
And the ball is the
Christ.
gospel.
Yeah.
Christ and the gospel.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for your warning for the repulsed people. And this gets a little bit theological, and I'm sorry, but since the question is like, look, or if you're saying like a comfort is God raises bad people up sometimes for his purposes, and I buy that, like when you're talking about Old Testament kings and stuff. I'm wondering, assuming free will is a thing, what does it mean for God to raise up a president who is going to get elected by a whole bunch of free will agents casting votes? Like, I don't know what that means when you say that.
Well, I think that God's plan is so much bigger than the United States. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like you see how God raised up Cyrus, who, again, it was the most powerful nation at the time, right? So there's this idea of even Nebuchadnezzar was used by God. Like, you read what Jeremiah says about Nebuchadnezzar, he was a horrible man. You read Daniel, he's
lunatic.
Now, did he repent and turn to God at the end of his life? Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of people, but I think the thing is, there are so many things bigger than what God is doing that we just, and again, it's kind of like, well, what about Hitler?
So I'm asking a completely different question. I'm asking like a logistical question. Like, is it possible for God to raise up a president that a whole bunch of people would have to vote for in the same way that, of course, he could tell Samuel directly, David's the guy.
Oh yeah,
that's the one.
Totally.
Like, that makes sense for God to raise up David. Like, that makes sense to me. I'm wondering what does it mean?
I think God uses the systems that man has created to accomplish his will. I believe that.
And I also think that we deserve in a constitutional republic, what we have, it's based on principles of democracy, that we are electing people who really do reflect us as a people.
Yes.
That's my concern, because I also believe that's still true with the Trump phenomenon, that the 65 to 95% or 85% of support we see from him is a reflection of where the evangelical church today is. And if that is true, I think that there's a problem in the evangelical church when it comes to, to where our hope lies, to where our discernment is on multiple levels. And I know that feels like a personal attack to people who are very strongly Republican or strongly Trump supporters. And I don't mean it other than I'm poking you in the brain. I do want you to think about that.
I think the biggest issue and I've talked to so many of them, they just don't know what the good alternative is, because the alternative to them looks like Kamala Harris, and that's where they get repulsed.
Right. And that's where we're going to be doing another episode here in the next few days on the issue of debating and arguing. To me, that is one of the classic flawed fallacy debate strategies, and it's called a false dichotomy.
Yeah.
There aren't only two choices. Now, there may be two viable choices, but there aren't just two choices.
True.
And I think that's where, and again, the pragmatism says, well, I'm not going to vote for an unviable choice. But the fact remains is there are other choices one can make than to vote for someone that they fundamentally disagree with on either side.
I agree.
So,
okay.
Ben, that was awesome. Thank you. I'll think about that for a long time. And as always, we appreciate the fact you listen to us here at Life Talks, rants and all. We love it that you do listen to us. Always feel free to contact us at lifetalks@lifecharlotte.com, and we'd be glad to entertain your ideas, suggestions, and Ben will read your criticisms.
I love him.
Yes.
Bring him on.
He wants more. But we are grateful that you listen to us. And as always, thanks for joining us here at Life Talks.